Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. This year, just keep in mind we're focused on building sustainable influence. So just make sure that you're following along, sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date. And as always, I'm Scott, and with me is our trusted leadership expert, Dr. Michael David Morales, also known to many as Mo.
What's up, Scotty? Good to be here, man. Let's do this.
So you're going to like this story today. So I dug deep for this. Well, I guess not super deep. It could have gone deeper, but I did dig for this one. So Billy Beane, the longtime general manager of the Oakland Athletics, still the Oakland Athletics, not yet the Las Vegas Athletics, but he completely changed how baseball teams think about recruiting talent. Most people don't know this. Most people just know the film that came out about it called Moneyball. And so most people, that's their first kind of interaction with it. But the A's had one of the smallest budgets in the league. And sidebar, it also still has one of the smallest budgets in the league. But overall, they couldn't afford superstar players like the Yankees or the Boston Red Sox or today's Dodgers. Instead of competing kind of the traditional way, Beane took a different approach. So he started using data. So specifically stats like on-base percentage, which if you don't know, that's how often a player gets on base. But he used that to find what players were undervalued by other teams, and then he went after them. So Beane and his team looked for guys who didn't necessarily look like all-star athletes, but who quietly put up strong numbers. Players like Scott Hatteberg, who had been written off by other teams, or Chad Bradford, a pitcher with a weird throwing style, if you remember him, ended up playing key roles for the Oakland Athletics. Beane's mindset was just very, very simple. So instead of buying big names, his focus was on buying wins. And the way to do that is by getting players who overall just help score runs. And this approach ultimately paid off. So in 2002, the A's won 103 games and set a record with 20 wins in a row, all really just on this kind of shoestring small budget. And even though they didn't win the World Series that year, the way that Beane kind of built that team got everybody's attention throughout Major League Baseball. And his story became the basis for the book. And like I said, the movie Moneyball. And his methods eventually changed kind of the way overall that baseball and even other sports, and sometimes it really kind of businesses too, approach hiring and talent strategy. So Beane really showed that smart, creative thinking can be just kind of as powerful as money when it comes to building a winning team. And really, that's kind of what we're talking about today. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, so you know we talk a lot about getting the right people on the bus. And that's really what we're talking about today. We're digging into the idea of talent management. So Mo, why don't you just go ahead and take us away?
As you know, that's one of my favorite movies. I am a staunch supporter of Brad Pitt. I think that because he's a pretty boy, he does not get the love that he deserves as an incredible actor. In fact, I was talking to one of my buddies just yesterday about all the different roles that he's played. So if you haven't seen a Brad Pitt movie, you got to go see it. One of my favorite parts about Moneyball is the scene where he's literally just stuffs that entire Twinkie into his mouth. I went out and bought a box of Twinkies after I saw that for the initial time, because I hadn't had one in a long time. So maybe Twinkie can sponsor us.
Great. Yeah, well, dude, I'm kind of in for that. Like a little scared because it is Twinkies, and I mean you got to admit they might be delicious, but they're just a tad scary.
I don't want to know what's in them. I just know that they taste incredible. So great lead in. When we want to get the right people, that's very simple in the way that you put it. Yes, you want to get the right people, but what does that mean, leaders? It means, first of all, point number one today, that from time to time, you need to focus on talent and not how long somebody's been there. Okay. Just because somebody has fixed copy machines for 20 years doesn't mean they're the best at fixing copy machines. So the question I always ask somebody is, does the person that we are looking to hire or bring on the team have 20 years of experience, or do they have 1 year of experience 20 times in a row? Much different. So as you know, Scott, I'm in the Army, and as a reservist, I go in about once a month, and actually more than that with everything that's going on in the world. But one of my favorite non-commissioned officers, also known as an NCO, she's leaving after having been at our unit for about 3 years, which is normal. She's what's called AGR, so Active Guard Reserve. So she's pretty much a full-timer. And she's leaving. Her next role that she's going to play at the new unit that she's going to is going to be in charge of talent management. The Army really does that now. They have a role for a person that is in charge of talent management. What does that mean? That's an easy way of saying we know everybody in the Army has a specific role that they sign up for, but that might not be the role that we're going to have you in at the unit. So for instance, somebody might be positioned in the Army and gone to school to be a mechanic. But that person who went to school to be a mechanic might also have their master's in business. And so you don't want to bring that person in and have them just work on Humvees. You want to use their talent where it is. And if their everyday job is working in businesses and managing teams, you would be losing the talent if you didn't use it the way that you could. So the Army started to figure this out over the last 20 years or so. And so now they just call it what it is. It's talent management. And I really wish that the Army had been doing this a long time ago. If they would have read Jim Collins' Good to Great, they would have learned, yes, we want to get the right people on the bus. And if you get the right people on the bus, now it's time to get them in the right seat. Just because they're a mechanic doesn't mean they have to sit in the mechanic seat. If you don't have a mechanic, obviously, yeah, you need them to do that. But what if you need somebody that's going to run the business part and they have a master's in business? Well, obviously, you want to get them in that seat. So just like the Army is using now, the new big term, Scotty, is ATAP, which is Army Talent Alignment Process. Sounds really important, doesn't it?
It
It's
sounds
just
so important.
it's just an easy way of saying we're actually going to use people for what they're good at.
That's honestly great. I really liked what you said at the beginning where, it's not about the number of years you served. I feel like too often we really think that, well, I've been here for this long, I deserve that. But in reality, like what have you done during that time? And I think back to, one of our favorite movies, right? Office Space. And, you look at the main character and, if he'd been at the company for 20 years, like what has he done? Just because he's been there for that long doesn't really mean that he deserves a promotion because he's done nothing, if you look at that. But one thing that I kind of had that kind of sparked into my head, I should say, when we're talking about the idea of, people coming into positions knowing, hey, like I trained for this, but not that being necessarily their strong suit. Do you think or feel like that comes from a lot of just individuals not really knowing what their strength is or their strengths are?
A lot of people are in the wrong spot on a team. In fact, whenever I have a sports team or I am managing a team in an office or if I'm consulting, the first thing that I do is I use, and Scotty here at Rising Tide, we use the DISC profile assessment.
Hmm.
And I give that to everybody, not because I want to pigeonhole you and say this is exactly who you are, but it's going to give me a good little cheat sheet of how not just I, but whoever I'm working with to say, this is Scott's personality. And if you are not leading from your personality to Scott's personality, he's just going to get frustrated. So yeah, the short answer to your question is I think there's a lot of people in the wrong spot. And the best leaders don't really care what you're there to do. They figure out what you're good at, and then they use you in that capacity. In fact, whenever I have a team of any sort, if I find a good person, I don't care if they're good at anything that I'm doing on the team right now, I will find a spot for them. I'll create something.
I think that's such a big shift if you think about it, just between what we do typically in the workplace, just that idea of really just changing your mindset to, we need to find the best person for this. And it could be someone straight out of school rather than the guy that has put 32 years in or whatever it may be. So let's kind of talk a little bit about when leaders kind of really start to think this way, or what happened, like what's the science behind great talent development?
Yeah, great question. Point two today is the science of talent management is really important. There's an art and there's a science of most things that we do. But when we're talking about the science of talent management, we're really saying, how do we understand the systems and frameworks that are behind the modern talent strategy? So, leaders, you need to know that. You need to understand how talent and talent strategy works. So, talent management defined would be this: it's when we align an individual's strengths with the organizational needs. Your organization needs something. You need to get people that are going to fill those spots. And so that's how we look when we bring people in to interview them. But just because you bring somebody into an interview and they don't fill that specific spot, you need to know that if they're a good person, you got to get them on your team, because data and behavioral analytics are really driving strategic HR decisions. In fact, the Harvard Business Review said that in an article called Talent Management for the 21st Century, it's really important that we bring talent to the forefront and not just worry about this person crosses all these T's, dots all these I's. This is the person we want. No, it's not. If you bring somebody in and you see that they have something good to give to your team, you need to get that person on and give them a role. You can find a place for them. We use the Wiley disc assessment, which is going to give you a good opportunity to see what kind of person am I? What is my personality? So get to know yourself so you can get to know your people.
What does it look like to actually develop a person and lead them well kind of into this model? Because overall, that's really where the art of leadership comes in.
Yeah, it really does. In fact, point three is this: the art of developing talent as a leader. We talked about the science. Now we've got the art. What does it mean to coach and empower people based on their potential, not just their performance? And what I mean is when you bring somebody in, you're bringing them in and they say, hey, these are the things that I've done in the past. I can do that for you. Wonderful. My next question is, okay, I expect you to do that. But what's untapped? What's the untapped potential that you could do even more or better if you were given different tools or training? That's where I come in as a leader. It's not enough to put people on the right in the right seats on the bus. You have to be willing to develop them. And Liz Wiseman in Multipliers says that talent magnets develop and stretch people. What does that mean? If you want to be a talent magnet, if you want people to come to you and be a part of your team, you have to develop and stretch them beyond who they are. The best coaches are those who have a little bit of a grainy relationship with their student athletes. They kind of tick them off a little bit. I love to tick off my student athletes and let them know, I don't think you're working hard enough. And I don't just say that willy-nilly. I don't tell somebody they have potential that they don't. But I can tell you this: I don't think I've ever met a student athlete that's come into my program that didn't have higher potential than they were giving me. And as soon as I see that and they know that I see that, they're going to work harder for me as a coach. But in reality, they know that they can do something. And so they all of a sudden get better at what they're doing because they're thinking, yeah, I am this good. I can get better. And that works in the workplace as well. Leaders, who are the people in your office that you need to stretch? Maybe you've got people that they've been doing a great job, but you need to help them do more. You need to help them be better. And so you do have to remember though that there are some pitfalls. You got to make sure that you're not biased. You really have to help your people be good at what they are and then stretch them in the areas that they have potential, not just something that they're not good at all. You can't just hope somebody's going to be good at something and then they're not. But also, you got to make sure that you don't pigeonhole people. When somebody's good at something, all of a sudden that's what they're known for. And so if somebody's great at doing spreadsheets, all of a sudden they're just doing spreadsheets. In the show The Office, Pam was pigeonholed. Remember, she didn't want to be a receptionist anymore. She said, I can do more. She wanted to go out and be part of the sales team. She thought she had some untapped potential. And as soon as they let her do that, she did great. Leaders, what are your people doing? Don't just look at what they're good at. Think about what they can be good at. And it's your job to develop talent. And you do this by being strategic and relational. Again, it comes down to everything we talked about, Scott. You got to know your people. You've got to talk to them on a daily, weekly basis. You got to get to know who they are. You got to think about their passions. What do they do when they're outside of work? I doubt if somebody's crunching numbers, they don't go home and crunch numbers at their house. That's not what they're doing as a hobby.
No.
What are your people doing? What are they good at? What do they want to be? I love bringing out the untapped potential of my people. And leaders, I think that if you really focus on understanding and knowing your people, there's some untapped potential that is waiting to be unlocked.
I absolutely love this last point. So it is just so crucial for leaders to just understand that you cannot pigeonhole someone. Like you said, I feel like too often we look at someone in the workplace and we go, man, they're super good at that. So I'm only going to have them do that. And, I'm doing a good job as a leader by rewarding that person, by letting them do what they're good at. And it's like, well, just because they're good at it doesn't mean that they will enjoy doing only that. And so often people are good at more than just one area, and pigeonholing them not only, decreases, their influence, but it also probably harms morale.
Leader, it's up to you as the leader. If you don't take the reins and show your people that you care more about just the bottom line, you're going to lose them. I meet so many leaders that say, well, I just can't keep people on my team. As soon as you say that, that's not a company problem. That's a you problem. People don't leave companies.
Yes.
They leave managers. They leave management. How many of us have been frustrated with the manager that we've been under? I've left jobs before because I didn't like the manager. I've stayed at jobs before for less money because I loved my manager. Heck, when I started working for Kevin right out of high school, I was getting paid peanuts, but I believed in the vision and I knew that he was focused on me. He even told me, he said, Mo, I have a small stipend that I carved out of this other ministry and I want to pay you X amount of dollars a month. I know it's not a lot, but I'll tell you this, if you stick around and pay your dues, I'm going to help you get better each day and be the best at what you're doing. And Mo, I know what you're good at, and I know what you want to be good at, and I know what I think that you could be good at. If we put all that together, it could be worth it. Do you want to stick around? And I said, absolutely. Scott, it was one of the best decisions of my life. And now because of that, it's not about money. It's not even about where I was. It was the management that I was under. Kevin was a great leader and he was a great manager. He still is. He's so good now that his boss keeps on moving his retirement back. Of course he wants Kevin because Kevin doesn't work for the paycheck. Of course, he needs his money, needs to feed his family, but he doesn't need it anymore. He wants to change the composition of what he's doing. He wants to be a force multiplier at that church. And as soon as he says, well, I can't do that anymore, I'll be done. And at this point, when he's, for those of you out there who are close to retirement, yeah, if you can find something that you continually be passionate about, you'll keep working. And so leaders, give your people a reason to be passionate, whether they're 18 and going into the workforce like I was with Kevin, or if you are in your 60s and you're getting ready to retire and you've got people who are good leaders that know your potential, even though you're seasoned, as Kevin says it, and they're going to want to keep you on their team. So leaders, it's up to you. Make the good decisions, use the science, use the art of talent management, and get the good people and then keep them.
Mo, what are your final thoughts for us before we sign off for today?
Yeah, remember this, leaders. Start seeing your people not as roles to be filled, but potential to be unlocked. Their potential, not your potential, not the potential for the company. Also, your job as a leader isn't just to move the bus forward, but it's to make sure that everybody's on board, that everybody's in the right seat, and everybody's ready to thrive. And then lastly, this. Remember that talent management isn't a program, it's a posture. And take that posture in your line of work and say, I'm going to be somebody who manages talent well. I'm going to lead the talent on my team, and I'm going to unleash them and it's going to make everybody better.
We really appreciate you guys being a part of today's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please just take a moment to rate, review, subscribe, and don't forget to visit our website, rtclc.com, and sign up for our monthly newsletter. It is free, but that way you guys can get access to all those extra insights that we don't get to on the podcast. Until next time, lead with purpose, stay authentic, and make an impact.